Welcome back to the channel, guys, and I hope you guys are doing pretty good. Good to see your smiling face today. Firstly, I hope that you guys have studied all the lectures from the past, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. I hope these things are completed. Do let me know in the comment section whether these lectures are helpful for you guys or not. Now, a lot of you guys are giving interviews also. So if you guys have given any recent interviews for any company, you guys can share me those questions over my LinkedIn. So just go to LinkedIn, send me a connection request and just DM me your questions. I'll be happy to cover it off in the future lectures. Now, in today's class, guys, we will be focusing on the topic of exception handling. I know you know this particular topic. It's a very simple topic, but hey, it's my job to cover all the important interview questions from the automation testing perspective. In this entire series, guys, you are going to find all the legit commonly asked interview questions for automation testing. Okay, so this needs to be that one place where you can literally come back and visit and you will be able to prepare for the interviews fast. Now, let's say I am taking your interview today and I ask you the question, what is exceptions? What you are going to say? Yes? Take a moment, think about it. So if someone asks you in the interview that what are exceptions, okay, what you're going to say? Most of the time people say that any unexpected behavior which disrupts the normal flow of your program is basically called as exception. Right now I'm talking to you and all of a sudden if there is someone who's ringing the bell on my door, that's an exception because it's going to disrupt the flow of our communication, right? So this is what you call as exception. In Java, whenever you want to handle exception, there are only two ways. What? There are only two ways. What are the two ways using which you can handle exceptions? The first one is try catch block and the second one is going to be the throws keyword. Tell me, which is the most preferred way of handling exceptions in Java, try catch or throws? It's always going to be try catch. So yeah, this is basically the whole, I would say, the synopsis, the nutshell thing that you should really be aware of your exception handling. But in today's class, we are going to go a little bit deeper in this particular topic. We'll also understand, okay, how do you handle exceptions? What are the different exceptions that pop up in your automation framework? All right, so let's get started over here. So the first thing over here, guys, is what is exception handling? Now, exception handling is basically the mechanism in Java to manage unexpected runtime failure. So your program is getting executed and all of a sudden there is an unexpected runtime failure during the execution of your program itself. Like the program is failing. So if I want to control that unexpected failure which is happening at runtime, okay, so that we achieve a normal flow of the program, this is what you call as exception handling. To read this particular point one more time, exception handling is basically a mechanism in Java to manage unexpected runtime failures in a controlled way so that the normal flow of the program is not interrupted. Now, in our automation framework, generally what happens, we are writing a lot of tests, right? Of course. So the thing that comes over here, there will be certain tests which will pass and there will be certain tests which are failing. The tests which are passing, they are basically, I would say, it's just the normal execution because we expect our test to pass. But there will be tests which are going to fail. We have written the test keeping in mind that the feature is gonna work, but something goes wrong. All right. So there is a interruption which is coming into picture. And because of that interruption, your test is failing. But what we want that, let's say I have written around 500 tests. And out of those 500 tests, if one test is failing, I don't want the executions to stop over there. It should keep on continuing for the rest of the test. So we still want to achieve normal execution flow. And in order to achieve that, we use exception handling. Are you getting the point? So instead of random crashes, exception handling allows us to fail the test with proper log, screenshot, and meaningful error messages. Failures such as no such element exception, timeout exception, or null pointer exception in your API responses are expected during failure. All right. So element is not getting found on the UI. Selenium WebDriver is not able to find it off. Timeout exception is coming because of your WebDriver rate. Null pointer exception comes into picture probably because your JSON path in your rest assured is incorrect. So because of that, there will be failures popping up. All right. And the thing is, even though when these failures are coming up, we still want to ensure that these exceptions are handled in appropriate way. So if the element is not visible, we want to make sure that it is tracked in the logs. Along with that, proper error messages should be there. Screenshots should be taken. All those things. Okay. So this is the whole reason that in our automation framework, we try to have proper exception handling. Now, as I have said, in Java, exception handling can be done using two ways. And you want to remember this particular stuff. One is basically the try catch. All right. And the second one is basically the throws keyword. And remember, the best way to handle exception is always going to be the try catch block. All right. So the best way to handle exception in Java is always going to be try catch. Now, this is a simple code example that I've written over here. And this is technically a very popular example, arithmetic exception. Over here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to divide 10 by 0. Can you divide 10 by 0? The answer is no. So over here, we will get arithmetic exception. So I'm trying to do this. And if this particular stuff is going to give me an exception, so we will be getting the arithmetic exception and we will print the proper error message on the console. When you're using throws, technically you're not able to customize the message. Okay. So if you want to make sure that the error messages or the exception messages are well customized, it's more human readable by you and your team, it is always better to go with the try catch block. Is this part making sense to everyone? Perfect. Please take a moment. Please read this particular stuff quickly one time. All right. Just now you're going to read this thing so that you're crystal clear with this particular stuff. Then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, I hope you have gone through this particular stuff. Now let's move on to the next page. And the next page over here, guys, is common exceptions in Selenium, and rest assured that you should remember. My bad, I should have written over here Selenium WebDriver. All right, this is important. Common exceptions in your Selenium WebDriver as well as your rest assured. Now, the thing is, when you're giving interview, right, again, in interview, the questions are always going to revolve around your project. So if I want to ask you that, if I want to ask you from the topic of exception handling, I am not going to go with the basic question, what is exception handling? This doesn't make sense. So if you have built your framework by yourself, if you have worked on a project, you would have faced a lot of exceptions. Are you getting the point? So my question would be, what are the various exceptions that you have faced in your projects? Now, a lot of time, people are only aware of no such element exception or a null pointer exception or your array index out of bound exception from Java, file not found exceptions. These are the basic ones. But since you're working with various libraries like your Selenium WebDriver, Rest Assured, your APM, OpenCSV, JDBC, your Vault, it can be OpenCSV, it can be Excel, all right, it can be properties file, it can be a hell lot of other libraries, okay? So you would have faced dozen of exceptions. So when you're giving interviews, just don't talk about your array index out of bound exception, your element not found exceptions. Be more and more technical. Are you getting the point? So what I've done over here is I have created a list of exceptions which you will definitely face in your project, and we'll just read these things. Along with that, what I have done is I have written in one line, like in simple terms, what exactly this exception means. So you will be able to come up with some good stories to talk about in your interviews. So when you're talking about Selenium WebDriver, Obviously, the first one that comes into picture is your no such element exception. And basically what this exception means is that Selenium is unable to find the element in the DOM. Okay? In your HTML page structure, Selenium WebDriver is not able to find the element. And the reason can be anything. Probably your locator is wrong. Okay? So that time you would probably get this particular message, unable to find the element, or sometimes the element is going to appear a bit late. Okay? So that's the reason we use WebDriver wait. All right. Then the next comes into picture is timeout exception. So page or element loaded slower than expected. So the page load, okay, is happening a bit slowly. Because of that, you will get timeout exception. And it can also happen for element. If you're using WebDriver wait, okay, if you're going to use WebDriver wait now, and you're going to say something like wait dot until expected conditions, so and so, that time you will not get no such element exception. You will get timeout exception because we are waiting for an element to appear on the page. I hope this part makes sense. Then stale element or reference exception. Stale element reference exception. Now this is again a very important exception. Again, a lot of time in interview, they will ask this particular question, stale element reference exception. The element reference is no longer valid because the DOM has changed. What this means is that I found a particular element, okay, and before performing any operation, the page has reloaded, the entire DOM structure has changed. So what I have is stale. I have the old reference. Stale means old reference. Okay, we say na stale food. So what does stale food basically means? Purana khana. All right, old food. So the thing is, if you are having this stale element, it technically means whatever the reference of that particular element you are having, now the entire page has changed. Okay, so that reference is no longer valid. So you are supposed to do what? You're supposed to get that new web element again. You need to use the locator again and get it back again. Now, element not interactable exception. Element exists in the DOM, but it cannot be interacted with. Pretty simple. It can be anything because there might be again another element over it. Okay. This can be the reason for element not interactable. Element click intercepted exception. Now another element is blocking the click operation. So there is again the element, and over that there is another element, and there is some element which is technically not like giving us the option, or I would say is blocking the click operation. So this is what element click intercepted exception. Invalid selector exception, your locator is wrong. Simple as that. No such frame exception, trying to switch to a frame that doesn't exist. Okay, you're trying to switch to a frame that is not there. Same no such window exception, you're trying to switch to a window or a tab that doesn't exist or is closed. Then WebDriver exception, this is basically a common exception which is thrown by WebDriver when it is not able to perform any operation. Okay, that time you will be getting your WebDriver exception. Okay, so I have kept 9 exceptions. What I want you guys to do is pause this particular video. Okay, in your notebook, I hope you guys are making notes along with me. So you will be writing these exceptions in your notebook right now. Okay, just write the names. That's it. Okay, I hope you have written it off. Can I go ahead? In your rest assured also, guys, there are like 6 exceptions which are very common. The first one is assertion error. Now, tell me something. If you're using rest assured, in a rest assured, do you need the testing library like TestNG for assertions? Yeah. No. We use it because obviously we are creating the framework and all, but rest assured itself has a assertion or a testing library. What is that? It uses something which is called as hamcrest. Remember .then and all that comes into picture, given, when, then, and then we start writing the assertions and all. Probably you would have seen it. If not, I have created a 5 hours masterclass on YouTube which focuses on creating your entire API automation framework. Just do that. I am pretty sure if you put that particular project, it's really going to be helpful for you in your interview. You can really talk about all the things that has been built over there. All right. Then illegal argument exception, wrong header or parameter value. You're technically putting some wrong header or the body is technically wrong over there. That's the reason you're going to get this illegal argument exception. JSON path exception, when you're trying to extract a value from the response, okay? And if your JSON path is not correct, you are going to get this JSON path exception. Okay, so let's say I have data. Inside the data, I have ID, and ID is technically having some value over here. So I just write over here, let's say that the JSON path is data, and I'm expecting to get this thing, okay? Or probably I'm going to say data 123 as my key. There's no data 123 as the key over here. So you'll probably get a JSON path exception. Is this part making sense? Then correct exception. This is important. Whenever your server is slow or your backend is running slowly, you might end up getting your connect exception. That is, rest assured is not able to connect to the backend server, the base URI, okay, the IP address and all. That particular server is technically taking a lot of time for establishing a connection over there. Next, socket timeout exception. Technically, slow API response. There's a hell lot of load on your server. The response is going to take a lot of time. That's the reason you're going to get socket timeout exception. SSL handshake exception. This is again a very important one. It has been asked hell lot of time in interview. What is SSL handshake exception? Technically, the SSL certificate, okay, that you have attached to the request and all, it's technically expired. Make sense? Okay. So these are basically the 6 exceptions that you should be aware of from rest assured. There are many, but I just kept the important one for you guys. All right. Again, I want you guys to pause this particular video, quickly write down the rest assured exceptions in your notebook. Now guys, let's move on to the next question. And the next question is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. What is the difference between checked exception and unchecked exception? Checked exception is something which Java is going to check on your compile time. So compile time exceptions are basically checked exception. Whenever before running the program, you're able to decide which exception is going to pop up, that's basically the checked exception. Unchecked exceptions are basically the exceptions which are going to be decided or it's going to happen during the runtime. Most of your exceptions from your Selenium WebDriver, your rest assured, your APM, they all are unchecked exception, and this is something that you need to remember. Most of the exceptions from Selenium, rest assured, as well as your APM are basically unchecked exceptions. Now, over here, guys, remember one thing, that when we are talking about checked exception, when exactly it is going to be checked? It is going to be checked at compile time. It's going to be checked at compile time when you're writing the code. And your unchecked exceptions, basically the runtime exception, this is going to happen runtime. Runtime basically means which is going to happen during the execution of your program. Make sense? Next, handling. Whenever you are going to have checked exception, you are supposed to mandatorily handle it by yourself, and you will be doing it with the help of try catch or throws keyword. Whereas unchecked exceptions, it is technically optional. See, when you're writing wd.find elements or find element and you're giving the locator and all, irrespective of whether the element is shown on the page or not, your code still runs, right? Later on, when you're running the program, you're seeing that exception, element not found exception, and all those things. So the thing is, your unchecked exceptions or runtime exceptions, okay, even if you don't put it inside the try catch block, it is still going to get executed. But the best thing is you should always wrap these wd.find element or find elements inside the try catch block. All right. So we have to create wrappers. If you're not going to do that, what is going to happen from all the methods, you will always keep on throwing something or you'll explicitly handle it. All those things will keep on happening. I'll show you the code. Don't worry. But this is something that you should remember. Now, The cause for the checked exception can be external factor, which Java can really decide while writing the code. That is, you are going to have a file probably not be going to be present. A file not found exception, IO exception can come into picture. Your database, you're trying to connect to a database server might be down. So that's the reason you have the SQL exception coming into picture, right? That is also a checked exception. Network exception, that can also be there. Programming logic mistake, okay, as well as when you're talking about your web driver or you're talking about rest assured, they all will fall into the unchecked exception. Now, programming logic mistake can be what? Null pointer exception, arithmetic exception, all these things, okay? They all fall into the unchecked exception. Now, the example for your checked exception is IO exception, file not found exception. And for your checked exception, null pointer, array index out of bound, selenium exceptions, as well as your rest assured exception coming into picture. Now, let me just show you from your Eclipse also how exactly the checked exception works. See guys, this is my package com.d5. Let me just do a Control Shift F, save it. And let me just do a Control Shift O also. Yeah, better. Now, oopsie, let's close this. Now, the thing is, let's say I want to try to read a file. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to say file. Okay, I'm going to use the file class. I'm going to create a file reference, file equal to new file. And I'm going to say that the file that I want to read is data.txt. Now, if you notice now, over here in the 90 days SDET interview prep, you will not find a data.txt. But still, I'm telling Java that, hey, I want to read this file data.txt. It's not present. Okay. Now, I created this file pointer. I want to read the file. So I'm going to use the file reader fr equal to new file reader. I'm going to pass the file. Now, even without running the code, I'm not running the code right now, yet there is this line which is popping up. And if I'm going to bring my cursor over here, Java is telling me, hey, something is wrong with this particular chap. Unhandled exception type file not found exception. So Java is able to anticipate ki Baba, this is something a tricky line. It can create an exception. So the thing is, Java is telling for Java to run this particular program, the first thing that Java needs from us is that you handle exception. Okay, this line number 11, where I'm creating the file reader object, this line is going to create an exception because data.txt may be present over here, may not be present over here. It might be corrupted. Anything can go wrong over here while reading a file. So Java is telling that, hey, whenever you're trying to do any external operation, you're trying to connect to the database, you are trying to read a file, this is something which is external environment apart from Java. Okay. So this is going to create some issue. So Java is like, if you want me to read the file, first tell me what to do when I'm not able to read the file. That's what you call as checked exception. Now, in order to handle exception, we only have two ways. What are the two ways? You are either going to use a try-catch block or you're going to use the throws keyword. Always use try-catch. So I'm going to bring my cursor over here and I'm going to surround it with try-catch. Now, let me tell you one more important thing. This is my try block. Na? The rule says that you should never really create or declare a variable inside the try block. Okay. So, here I am having fr. This is the declaration. This is the object creation. So, fr is getting declared inside your try, right? I'm going to cut this chap and I'm going to put it off over here. So, declaration is just before the try. Just before the try. And initialization is happening inside the try. So over here, this is the initialization which is happening inside the try. And if something goes wrong, Java is going to throw me file not found exception. It's going to print the file not found exception on my console. Are you getting the point over here? Now, The thing is, with your Selenium WebDriver, right, obviously all of these exceptions are basically runtime exceptions. But when we are using Selenium WebDriver in our framework, it's really important that you handle these runtime exceptions also with try-catch block. Let me just show you. Yeah, I have created this chap over here, public void click on. And you will notice that it is just doing element.click. This is the overloading where it is happening. At one end, I have put it inside the try-catch block, and other end, I have not kept it. So over here, web element, wait until, like expected condition, all those things, I've given it off, and I'm trying to perform a click. That's it. It's doing nothing fancy. But the thing now, whether you're trying to perform a click, okay, you're also performing a click, you are also performing the click. What is going to happen? It is going to be decided when the browser and the page is getting loaded. Are you getting the point? So when the page is going to be loaded, that time, if the button or whatever the element that you want to click, whether it is available or not, that time it is, gonna give me the exception, or it may not gonna give me the exception. So what I've done is, irrespective of whether this line is going to give me a runtime exception or not, I have put it inside a try-catch block. I have kept it inside a try-catch block. Even if I don't put it inside the try-catch block, it's completely fine. Okay. But for better managing of your exceptions and better having those error messages, it's always better that you surround it with try-catch block. All your runtime exceptions needs to be wrapped in your try-catch blocks. Because if I'm able to wrap it inside my try-catch block, I can customize the error messages based on my requirement, so that people don't really need to read the Selenium WebDriver error messages or Java error messages. They will be reading the custom exception messages that we have written. So in your automation framework, it's really important that you create your custom exception messages. Are you getting the point? That's the reason I say you always supposed to use the try-catch block. Are you getting the point? Perfect. Now going back to this particular document, the next page over here, I have written it explicitly that remember, many framework wraps checked exception into unchecked ones to keep the page object methods clean and avoid cluttering of method signature with throws declaration. So over here, public void click on, and over here, even though this particular chap is an unchecked exception, I am still putting it inside a try-catch block. Make sense? I hope this part making sense to everyone. Perfect. Now, the next question, again, it has been asked a lot of time, difference between throws and throws. Again, there is going to be like millions of videos over the internet which is going to talk about throw and throws, but I'm going to keep it very specific to automation framework. See, when we are talking about throw means manually I am throwing an exception. Throw is basically the line is not creating an exception. I want to throw it. Okay, I want to throw a custom exception. That time we use throw. Throw is basically used inside a method to explicitly trigger an exception when a specific condition is met or occurs. Example, throw new runtime exception, username missing in the test data. Now read carefully over here or look carefully over here. We have the login page and we are trying to enter username. Alright. You're going to give me a username or something. Now whatever this username that you're giving me, suppose the username is empty. Okay. There is nothing, or it's technically null. Okay. Either it is empty or it is null. In both of these things, what I'm doing is first I'm validating whether username is equal to null or whether username is empty. If username is null or is it empty, should I put it inside, should I try to do the send keys? No, nah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a runtime exception. Explicitly, I am throwing an exception on my console, and this runtime exception is going to have the message username missing in the test data. Username missing in the test data. So in this way, I can come to know that, hey, the issue is with my test data file, that username field is technically not having data over there, rather than thinking about what is going wrong with my Selenium code and all those things. Getting the point? All right. So over here, if the username is going to be empty, you are technically going to get a runtime exception, and that runtime exception is going to be the one which we are giving the message username missing in the test data. Okay. And then you have throws. I mean, like throws, you have used a lot of time. Look carefully over here. This is your exception demo. I say that I don't want to use a try catch block. So one way to handle exception is obviously with the try catch block. But there is another way to handle exception is with the help of throws. So I just need to bring my cursor over here and I'm going to say add throws. The moment I do it, this method is going to throw your file not found exception. Okay, if the file is not available. Are you getting the point? So throws is basically used for exception handling. But the problem that happens with throws now is that if one method is throwing an exception, other method which is going to call that particular method, that also needs to throw that particular exception. Let me show you what I'm trying to say over here. That this piece of code, I'm just going to cut it and I'm going to put it inside another method called M1. All right. And I'm going to paste this chap over here. This is going to be public static void M1 Control Shift F. Let us remove this chap. Now, let's say I decide to throw this chap. Okay. Now, over here, I'm going to call the M1 method. You see, I'm calling M1 method, but here also at line number 11, I am getting this unhandled exception. So main method internally calls M1 method. M1 method is throwing file not found exception. So what? I need to handle it over here also. Okay. Now imagine you have created how do I use it? You have created some problem. Okay. Is it my responsibility to handle that problem? No, not at all. If you have created the whole mess, you are the one who is supposed to solve it. So over here, even though I'm calling M1 method, it's not the job of the main method to throw this file not found exception. Are you getting the point? So that's the reason to avoid this unnecessary throws chaining in all the methods. What we generally do is we don't use throws. We technically use try catch. So if I just remove this chap and I'm going to say, bring my cursor over here. Let's save this chap for a moment first. Yeah. And let's surround it with try catch. Now you will notice that M1 is technically handling its own mess in the try catch block. And I can just call M1 without worrying about putting the throws over here. All right. This is the benefit that we get with try catch. But throws is also another way using which you can handle exception. Now guys, let's move on to the next question, which is again a very important interview question. A lot of time in interview, they will ask the question, have you created any custom exceptions in your automation framework? Or what do you know about custom exceptions? So this is something which you should definitely be aware of and you should be using it in your project. Now, custom exceptions basically means what? User-defined exceptions. All right. So over here, custom exceptions are basically user-defined exceptions created to represent application-specific failure. So if from the framework perspective, I want to have my own custom exceptions, what I need to do? The simple thing is you create a class, all right, any class, and that particular class is going to extend your runtime exception class. Remember, custom exceptions are always going to be your runtime exceptions. So you are going to take this invalid test data exception class, and this class is going to extend the runtime exception. And over here, the moment I do this, we get this constructor, okay, that is this invalid test data exception, and you're going to give whatever the message you want to throw during your invalid test data. So the usage is pretty simple. Whenever you are creating a custom exception, you are going to throw it with the help of throw keyword, and you will just create the object of your custom exception class. So over here, this is the constructor call. And to this constructor call, I am passing this message. Makes sense to everyone? Perfect. And why do we use custom exceptions? See, sometimes what happens, we get these generic messages like null pointer exceptions and all. And during your CI builds, like when you're trying to use Jenkins CI or GitHub Actions, we really don't understand why exactly the null pointer exception came into picture, right? At that time, in order to provide better context to the exception messages, we use your custom exceptions. So over here, the generic exceptions like null pointer exceptions don't provide enough information in your Jenkins CI or any kind of CI tools. So custom exceptions make the failure more readable, meaningful, and easier to debug. I hope this particular part makes sense to everyone. So all you need to do is you need to just create your class, extend that particular class with a runtime exception. To that particular class, you're going to have this constructor, and that's it. Okay, this is super message. So whatever the message you're giving, it's going to go to the runtime exception constructor. And you are going to use your custom exception by using the throw keyword, throw new invalid test data exception. That's all. Is this part clear to everyone? Perfect. Now let's move on to the last question, guys. And that one is pretty simple. We have done it a lot of time, which is purpose of finally block. Come on. Okay. The purpose of your finally block is that the finally block is going to get executed regardless of whether an exception was thrown or caught. So if I'm going to put anything inside the finally block, okay, that particular block is going to get executed irrespective of whether there was an exception or not. Is this part clear? So a common scenario is closing the database connection or quitting your WebDriver instance. So even if the tests are crashing, the finally block is going to ensure that the browser is getting closed, preventing memory leak, so that unnecessary browsers should not be opened on your remote servers or on your local machine. I hope this particular part makes sense to everyone. Now, this is all the commonly asked questions from exception handling topic. But what I have done is now, I have created a small code. And in that particular code, what we are doing is we will just go through all the exceptions properly and understanding how they are happening and how exactly you need to manage it off. So over to Eclipse over here, let me just quickly show you all these things. If I go to this exception demo2.java, okay, now in your framework, as I've said, you will definitely get null pointer exception, array index out of bound exception. You will get index out of bound exception also. Let me just bring this guy up. You're going to get no such element exception, timeout exceptions, stale element exceptions, and all those things. Now, over here, when we are talking about null pointer exception now, observe carefully. I am trying to create a list. Okay. Null pointer exception basically means what? Memory is not allocated. So if you will notice, I am not creating a new array list object or a new linked list object over here. It's not happening. And the thing is, this reference data right now is storing null, meaning the list is not created in the memory. So if I try to use any of your list methods, like if I try to do data.size, I am going to get null pointer exception. But because we have surrounded it with a try-catch block, what is going to happen? The execution of the flow is not going to get, disrupted. The execution of the program is going to continue properly. Okay. Now, the second one which we have is index out of bound exception. What is index out of bound exception? This one basically comes for your array list, your linked list and all. When you're using collection, you get index out of bound. When you're using array, you get array index out of bound. So people know what exactly array index out of bound is, right? You're trying to access an index which is not present in your array. So the same thing over here. If you notice, I am creating a list. To this particular list, I'm adding a particular string. And then this particular string is going to be added on the 0th index. Perfect. And what I am doing is I'm trying to access the element which is there on the 2nd index. But there is no element which is present on the 2nd index now. Are you getting the point? The element is only available on the 0th index. We don't have element on the 1st index or the 2nd index. So in this scenario, you will get index out of bound exception. So please make a note that you're going to get index out of bound exception when you're using collection, and you will get array index out of bound when you are using an array. The same thing over here, guys, is for your array index out of bound. Array index out of bound exception, you're trying to access a position that is not present in that array. Alright, not a list, in an array. So this is my array. This array has 1, 2, 3. 1 is on the 0th index, 2 is on the 1st index, and 3rd is on the 2nd index. And I'm trying to access the element which is there on the 5th index. So over here, I'm going to get index 5 not available. Make sense? So over here, this chap is going to give me array index out of bound exception. Next, over here, we have your Selenium exceptions that I have kept. So I have just created a demo website, which is in this demo.html, which I've kept over here. So I'm just loading this particular website. So driver.get, I'm going to go to this particular website, which is demo.html over here. And you will notice what I've done is that when you're working with Selenium, as I said, you get runtime exceptions. Na? So all your runtime exceptions are always going to be checked. So I'm going to surround it with try catch directly. Try catch, element not found, no such element exception, caught no such element exception. So the messages which will be printed on the console will be much more readable. Same for your timeout exception. Over here, since I'm using WebDriver wait, and I'm trying to click on a button, if that button is not visible, okay, it will wait for some time for that button to be visible, but after some time, you will end up getting timeout exception. And finally, the stale element exception. Stale, as I said, it's something which is old. So you found the element earlier, but the page has changed, the page has reloaded. And because of this, what is going to happen, that element is no longer valid. So I am trying to find the element, then I am clicking on the refresh, but I am using that same refresh button now, okay, and I'm trying to click on it. So because the page has refreshed, what is going to happen, you will end up getting stale element exception over here. Alright, that's all. So let's save this particular chap. Let's right click, run as Java application. One thing over here, because we have surrounded all these things with try catch block, the program is going to work properly, okay? Even though we are getting the executions, even though we are getting the exceptions, what is going to happen? The flow of this program is not getting disrupted, okay? So, will it work? The answer is no. Of course, there are like exceptions coming into picture, but the whole point is I will be seeing those exception messages properly on my console. So I'm going to do right click, run as Java application. Let me just bring this guy up. You will notice that even though I'm getting null pointer, index out of bound, array index out of bound, all these exception messages are coming. But still, it launched that browser. You see this message, na? The browser is getting launched. No such element exception was caught. Timeout exception was caught. And over here, we got element click intercepted exception. This exception, I have not handled it. So that's the reason. What you see over here, you see a message from Selenium WebDriver, and you will notice that the browser is also closed. And the reason over here is I have put it inside the finally block, finally driver.quit. So irrespective of whether you are getting exception or you're not getting the exception, this line is going to get executed. Here you see the program is getting executed over here, and after some time it's going to close also. So over here, finally block is going to get executed whether you get an exception or you don't get an exception. Oof, that's all. Okay. So this is all you need to be aware of for your exception handling topic. Now, the notes of this particular lecture, I have kept it in the members only section. So if you guys are interested, definitely check it out. I'm going to see you guys in the next class. Tomorrow, I believe, is Saturday. So Saturday and Sundays, we have no lectures. But please make sure that on Saturdays and Sundays, you revisit all the topics that we have studied. Okay. So in this way, what is going to happen? You will be revisiting the topics. You will be having much more better the clarity. And if you have given any interviews recently, please share your interview question with me on LinkedIn. I'll try to cover it off in the future series. So that's it from my end. Signing off as Jatin. Please take care of yourself, guys. Don't forget to mark your attendance. Go to the comment section. Tell that you have completed the lecture. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.